When you become a history teacher, you never stop learning history. I used to be one, and this is something I had to learn as well. I mean, to tell the truth, I had been taught from even before becoming one that you don't stop learning it. But when you learn something with the evidence to back it up, you stop teaching that which contradicts it, unless there's evidence to back that up too. That's another story. The point I'm making is that when you become a history teacher, even then you do not stop learning history as new discoveries are made. So I'm going to give you some history as a former history teacher of the pro-black bend. 1990, in a medium-sized city, I guess, in the Gulf Coast region of the American South, there was a little boy reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that boy was me. 3 decades and 3 months ago, my life was changing. It was never the same. That was when I went into the pro-black and black conscious community under my parents and under their contemporaries in age. And so I'm coming from that time frame and that mindset. Now, I'm in my early 40s, but the mindset under which I came in was the mindset of those who were now elders. They're retired, if not expired. They're too old to be active in this stuff anymore. They shouldn't have to be. And I'm going to be honest with you. The nigger community burned them out. And I'm done. I'm only in my early 40s and I'm burned out from trying to advocate for niggers. And I only want to advocate for upright black folks now at this point. That's it. Nobody can come to me and say, hey, man, come on now, black man, you pro-black. You got to be pro-black all the way. No, I'm pro-black, not pro-nigger, not pro-porch monkey, not pro-Tarzan chaser, not pro-spear chucker, not pro-itness or any other. No, I'm not pro any other negative stereotype in the minds of a Klansman that you want to bring to reality so you can have nigger entertainment and fun. Done with that. So that being said, when you today in my audience now that can hear me, if you're a part of wherever you are, I don't blame you when you get upset and bristle at the mention of pro-black. Now you're wondering, how can I be red pill and then also be Muslim and pro-black and not blame you when you bristle at the mention of it? Here's the reason. When I came into it in 1990, I told you who I came in under and how and what their mindset was, right? Now, not all of them had superpowers and could help out every black person, but they were sincere. Their hearts were in the right place. Usually they had to struggle more than other non-pro-black black people because they were whitelisted in the job market. That did happen. I mean, Rosa Parks agitated. She was no longer desired for employment in her, in Alabama. And it was a similar thing where I grew up, where we were. You are pro-black. You're agitating. You're talking that black power stuff from the 70s all over again. That's so 1970s. Put that fist down. Cut the afro. Matter of fact, why don't you perm your hair? If you just change your attitude a little bit, you could find a nicer job. And yeah, I shit you not. This is the kind of stuff they said. So, and they did face this. So they oftentimes had to struggle more than non-pro-black black folks. They had to struggle more than the ones whose minds they were trying to liberate from plantation mentality, the slave mind, the inferiority complex, the assumption that we were as depicted in the Tarzan movies. Let me tell you this right quick. That was a different time, and that was a completely different crowd. And today it is something else. I'm going to tell you where this came from, because it is interesting. Trust me. You may be thinking, come on, black man, I don't give a rat's ass where these niggas came from. No, let me tell you. The ones that we were trying to liberate, when it would have benefited them and the community around them more back then, were niggas. They were itness. They believed the stereotypes. So they acted them out. Today, they're the ones calling themselves pro-black that you rightly call pro-whack. And I'm going to tell you why. When you are an itness, you believe someone else's stereotypes. What white supremacists believe about you, you internalize. The jungle savage, the pimp, the brute, just the in general subhuman rat bastard nigger that they always depict us as, or have depicted us as in many cases, you begin to believe that you were that. If you are an itness and you act it out. So when someone comes to uplift you, you don't believe that you can even be that. And so you begin to despise the one that wants to unlock your mind and uplift you. You're not Neo, you're just Negro. And you are Morpheus's enemy, and you want to turn him into the robots of the Matrix at every turn. He says, for your mind, you're like, man, if you don't miss me with that mess, and you want to do all kinds of ignorant stuff, whatever your vice is, it is always something that white folks would negatively stereotype you for doing anyway. We were trying to liberate them, and this was the mistake. Let me tell you why that was the mistake, because this does get interesting. Believe me, bear with me. Whichever side of the political spectrum you're on, red pill, blue pill, anything, I'm going to tell you how this happened. It happened like this. I was one of only 2 teenagers that was in this in my medium-sized city. There should have been more, but I was one of only 2. There were only 2 teenagers, and there was a younger one, a sibling of mine, who was not even a teen at that point. We were the only ones that we knew. I'm gonna tell you that was somewhat rough, because when we were trying to, slowly and gently unlock people's minds, or whatever the case was, at least get them to question things, oh my God, they wouldn't listen. And I'm not saying they were all mean and stuff like that. It's not like we just had no friends. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but they weren't going to even listen. You couldn't finish a sentence to tell them something for them to even consider it. You couldn't get the sentence out because, niggas know everything. Right? And you all know someone like that, some knucklehead ass nigga. You try to tell them and they wouldn't listen. You couldn't even get a sentence out, interrupting you. Okay, so that's exactly what this was like. So as we were telling them, they would say, well, look, I don't want to hear that stuff, and you don't know what you're talking about, and niggas do be doing this dumb stuff all the time, and no, niggas do be acting like that in Africa, and I don't want to hear nothing about that because niggas be killing each other in Africa. They were just loyal to the slave mentality and the mindset. So guess what? They would watch Boys in the Hood and miss the message, which a lot of our youth did. They watched Juice, Menace to Society, and they missed the message. They always did. And so the only entertaining parts to them were the violent parts, and maybe some fornication. Nothing else. When they would get these things on VHS, they would rewind and watch these parts all over again. These were the same dumb niggas that always looked at the Scarface movie. And they would rewind to every violent part, but, they would completely miss the message that when you do that dumb stuff, you're going to die in a hail of bullets. And that's after you've already killed your best friend for something he didn't even do wrong and got a bullet planted in you from one of your own loved ones because you did them wrong. See, people keep missing these things. That's the mindset we were dealing with. So here's what happened. We tried to wake them up. There were motivational speakers that had been down these bad paths and wanted to stop the youth from doing it. And they would come along and they would recognize the positive youth, but they would say, look, I'm going to talk to your peers. Okay, fine. So they would say to our peers, you don't want to go down this path. This is what it's going to lead you to. But the thing was, they could only reach these youth because they had been down that path. So the youth never knew what we had planned, the alternative path, so that they didn't have to go down the pre-laid path, the pipeline, if you will. They refused to listen to us, but they would listen to someone that did what they did. The problem with them was that they didn't get the alternative path. So what they thought in their mind was, I can be like this guy. I can do the dumb stuff, come out, and then preach against it later on when I get older if I don't like the results. That's exactly what they were thinking. And they did it. They went down these wrong paths, and if they didn't get consumed by them, they came out later, a few years later, my peers. Now, these are my peers that would not have listened to me, but would listen to someone else, but then still get the wrong idea. Now, they're the ones coming out with these felonies and these permanent consequences of dumb choices they made, oftentimes coming from my nice neighborhood and not even having had to do this. Well, not oftentimes, but sometimes. And then they would turn around and they would then tell the youth that were younger than us. But they would also say to me and others like me, you can't reach them because you've never been them. And I would say to them, that's true. I was the one trying to get them to not do it in the first place. You were them. So then they would go and talk to the youth. Now, these are the ones about 15 years younger than you and I are. And they reach the same conclusion in the subconscious mind. I can do this dumb nigga stuff because that's all I know. And when I get older, then I can decide, okay, if I don't like it, I'm gonna come back and preach like him. And so it's a cycle. The problem is that none of them did what Malcolm did in the book, in his autobiography. They didn't even become literate or eloquent or outspoken in their own first language, which, and as we know them, is English. It's English for the ones that you and I know because we're Anglophones. And I'm not saying that they should be bigging up a white man's language per se. I'm simply saying that they should be able to have a command of it because language is a tool. I'm all for learning Kiswahili. I actually started to learn an Ethiopian language. It was the Amharic language. I learned about a third of it, and I can't pull it up now because it's been too long since I've had to use it. But I did. Because, see, to me, this was real. And learning the language of the one nation that had kicked the colonizer out with his tail between his legs, to me, that was an honor. Because to me, this was real from the time I was 13. It was not so for the ones that you now see in this new crowd. You see, they were weeds in the garden when I came in as a pro-black initially. Now the weeds have taken over and they are the garden. There is no more garden. And that's what you're looking at. So when you hate these on-crack pro-wacks, nobody can blame you. The issue is I'm going to point out to you that is not the crowd of pro-blacks under which I came in. That crowd, they've been burned out. They aged before their time, died before their time, even of heartache, because these porch monkeys that you see right now knew, they were told when they were young, the route to go and the route not to go, and they didn't want to go the route that they were told to go. They had to sit in the cell block in order to reach some kind of wisdom. And even then it's pseudo-wisdom because it's tinged by illiteracy and pseudoscience. And that's why all they can do is preach cross-eyed nonsense and put up a bunch of memes with naked black women with her fist in the air and her privates and her breast hanging out, calling her queen, mother, goddess, and then put some kind of pseudo-scientific, factually incorrect caption underneath the meme. That's all they can do because these were idiots from before, and they would not be a part of this on-crack pro-whack community if they weren't suffering some kind of permanent decision from dumb nigga decisions they insisted on making when they were young. Why? Because they had to be cool. According to the stereotypes, they had to be cool when they were young. These are the ones that did not have the internal strength to do something that's right when it goes against the crowd. They can't do it. They never could. These are the ones who think that they can walk in front of a crowd of people in the same direction, but in front of a crowd of people, dancing and playing instruments and entertaining this crowd behind them as they all go in the same direction and call themselves leaders, when in fact, if they were really leaders, they would turn around and walk in the correct direction no matter who does or does not follow them. They're not fit to lead because they'll only lead you in the direction that you want to go anyway, entertaining you as they do it, so that you and they can confuse their celebrity with leadership, when in fact, what's really going on is most of as we know, the masses of us are going in wrong directions. Most of us ain't really that bad, but we do tend to go in the wrong direction is popular. I'll put it like that. You see, most of them, they're just like the people that are walking behind them. They're just walking downhill because it's easy. If they really were qualified to be leaders, they turn around and march uphill before the floods come. And they would tell the people behind them, wait, we're walking into a floodplain below. We should probably walk to the high ground behind before the floods come. And who does not follow them. They would do that if they were actually leaders. And I'm telling you now, I'm telling you straight up, they can't. Because they know that if they do that, even though that is the right direction in which to walk, it's still an uphill walk. It's not impossible. It's just uphill. It's not even always that difficult, but it's still uphill. And people don't want to expend the energy. And not only that, well, actually, that's the main thing. They know that if they turn around and walk up, all of a sudden the same people that were calling themselves following them would say, you fell off, you going the wrong way. That's not the easy way. And that's what we're dealing with now. These niggas are the pro-Wacks. They're not pro-black. They just call themselves that. You're right when you call them pro-Wacks in many cases. There are people that may be sincere among them, but they're usually not famous and they're not celebrities. They're more likely to be someone you may know in your hometown, but they usually don't get speaking engagements. I'm never going to get paid for a speaking engagement because I've already told you. The high ground is Islam. You don't have to take my word for it, do the research, but I have to tell the truth about it. Yes, Islam. Okay, you disagree. Do the research, like I said. But when I tell you that, the point is that that's not necessarily going to be popular because it does involve self-discipline. I mean, to be fair, living as a Christian involves self-discipline, but it has to be worth it. And many people find that it's just not worth it to be a self-disciplined person according to the Christian doctrine. Too much arguing. Whereas in our case, the arguments are there, but they're usually minimized. They're more polite. And frankly, it does seem to be more worth it when you practice the self-discipline. But I've already said it. To me, no self-discipline, that's the floodplain. That's, as a matter of fact, that's already the bottom of the river. Even if it doesn't flood, eventually that's where it's going to lead you. But, it's easy to walk into. It's just not easy to stay there when it starts getting muddy and the water starts rising and the current gets stronger. So it's easy to walk into, but it's not easy to tolerate over time. Whereas the high ground is a bit of a, it's not impossible, but it gets hard at times to walk up. But then when you're up and the floods come, you safe, you high and dry. But even if you think the high ground is something else, the point is that if it involves self-discipline, people ain't gonna follow you there. You know that. Now that I've got you to think about it, when you look at these pro-Wacks calling themselves pro-black with no kind of intellectual honesty, self-discipline, or even just basic literacy in their first language at an adult level, for that matter, you realize you can't get these niggas to walk uphill. You realize that. They'll tell you it's a setup. Oh, that's a conspiracy to get you to fall off a high cliff. Yeah, you can get somebody to fall off a high building for all of that. Other ways to kill people. They'll tell you that's a conspiracy. Oh, you're just supposed to expend all that energy and be kept busy so that you won't see what's really going on around you. What's going on around you is that you can either walk uphill to escape a flood and to get a good view and see around you and have a very easily defensible position, or you can walk downhill into a damn floodplain and get washed away. And that's assuming you don't just keep walking till you hit the river and sink anyway. That's what we're looking at. And so when you today look at that pro-whack on crack community and you get angry, you should, because they are not what they call themselves. They're not pro-black. They're pro-idness. They're they're pro-intentionally dysfunctional negative stereotype. If you defend R. Kelly because of the lack of evidence to substantiate the allegations, you may be pro-black. But if you defend R. Kelly in spite of the evidence against him, you are pro-nigger. And it has degenerated. That's why you have elements of this community now, not mine. I'm talking about this newfangled bullshit, this on-crack pro-whack community that are now calling for further division of our people based on complexion and phenotype. That's the dumbest thing I've heard. You take a group of people that just naturally have diverse phenotypes and you try to divide them based on that. How dumb can you get? I mean, it's one thing to fight against a particular discrimination. I understand, and it does exist, but that's mostly outside the United States. You're going to turn around and fight an international discrimination outside the U.S. by punishing people in the U.S. that actually would have been against it right along with you. That's on crack pro-whack bullshit. And the reason for that is because you can't tell these stupid ass niggas the nuances of what's going on. You're not allowed to. They won't let you get a word in edgewise. And if they hear it because they can't interrupt it, they're not going to tell anybody else. I'm telling you, what they're fighting back against, and they should be, what they're fighting back against is not something that Black America's doing. It is something that other people are doing. What they're fighting back against is something you'll see in India, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, maybe even some parts of Africa. But you're not going to see it necessarily in Black America. Right now in Black America, Black women of all types get celebrated. Somebody for all of them. And they should be, I guess. Equally, to a certain extent, they should be. I'm not for the objectification of women in general, but the point I'm making is that I'm saying that there's a type of equality to it. There's somebody for Lupita Nyong'o for her to get her admiration, and there's somebody for Beyonce to get hers, and there's somebody for the ones in between to get theirs. They all can thirst trap if they want to. The ones who resemble them can all become Instagram models if they want to and get followings and make money from it. If that's really what it's about. But the reason why there's this unreasonable call for further recategorization and further division is because of on crack pro-wacks. They don't know anything. And they get a following because, again, people will follow anybody who's telling them to walk the easy path downhill. And that's all it is. It's just the easy downhill path to take. But I want you to keep this in mind. You could be someone who hates or loves me per se, but keep this in mind. These are not the same. What I came into in 1990 is not even the same as what they were in 1995 years later when I went to college in Atlanta. And that's not the same as what it was even going into 2005. And that's not what it was in 2012. And that's not what, and even 2012 was better than today. It is nothing but a degeneracy. If you are in your late 30s or younger, I don't blame you. You have every right to be angry and upset at what you see with them now. Because by the time you would have really known about them, let's say, you might have been 13 in 1995. So by the time you even knew about them, or let's say starting your teen years, 1995, by that time, a lot of them were wackos, but the wackos were beginning to get more headway in mainstream acceptance in the name of Black unity. And yes, the Million Man March had a hell of a lot to do with that, because every crazy fringe idea was equally accepted as valid, no matter how much scholarship and intellectual honesty and academic integrity had not gone into it. I never heard anybody say the black man is God until I went to the Million Man March. Never heard no dumb stuff like that. I don't say this just to be disrespectful or to be mean. I say it because calling any human being God or any creature God, it's like saying God's got limits, and okay, so who's going to be God then? If that's the case, why is the devil running the show? When I got back from the Million Man March, one of the NOI guys said, "You were afraid to go to the Million Man March, weren't you, brother?" I remember I went to this lecture. I was sitting there live listening to this guy say this. "You were afraid to go to the Million Man March, weren't you, brother?" But see, you didn't know that Farrakhan had black men with fighter jets ready to take out the crackers if they came to do anything to you, brother. You didn't know that, did you? I was like, are they telling me that black Americans have an Air Force, a black Air Force with advanced fighter jets, and we still got to suffer this stuff? Are these niggas kidding me? I kid you not, that's what I heard. And it just got wackier and wackier as time went on. One of the things that saved me, though, was that my own parents told me about the differences between the sincere, who may be capable or incapable, and the insincere. But the thing was that as they told me this, there was an understanding, and that was that these folks who were insincere and always trying to use people were not sincere pro-black. So we didn't necessarily count them as being any representation of anything pro-black back then. In today's time, they can be the leader easily, easily. But don't associate what you see now with what began. Even when I saw it in 1995, I didn't know how bad it was going to get. And if I did know, there was no social media through which I could have told you. There was just basic internet. And I was beginning to learn how to use that. That means that I have to redefine what it means to be pro-black, because since then I've become a Muslim and a serious practicing Muslim at that, even though I'm not the best. And that means I got to be pro-justice. And that's really what it's about, to be honest. Yes, black people have been treated unfairly and by more than just white folks. And in that regard, yes, I'm willing to advocate for our people, regardless of nationality. I'm willing to advocate for us. But this does not mean that I can any longer just simply sit up and say, well, because it's black, it's okay. No, it's more like if it's fair and just and equal treatment, then it is okay. But I can't sit up and say that just anything we make a fad or a trend is automatically okay or automatically wrong, for that matter. Neither one is really true. Fried chicken is not an inferior food because we seem to like it, even though we're not the only ones, of course. I'm just saying. But pants sagging, that's just impractical and stupid. I can't support that. But the reason I'm against it is not the same as the reason that some black Republican might be against it. He wants to not embarrass himself in front of white people. I'm like, look, why don't you just do it for your own benefit, and to hell with them white folk? As a matter of fact, why don't you do it for your own benefit, just to tick them off? That's where the difference comes in. And so being authentically pro-black in today's time means that you may have to support something in one environment and oppose it in another simply due to the change in the intentions that people have for supporting it. Is it okay to wear hoodies, for that matter? Sure, of course. I mean, sometimes it does get cold. All I'm saying is it's not worse to wear a hoodie when you're black. That's all I'm getting at. That's all. That is a very valid point to make. Black Lives Matter. Valid point to make. Although I'm not with necessarily that corporation started by George Soros and those women, the point is not an invalid point to make. And yes, it is some BS when people sit up and say all lives matter, not because the statement is wrong, but because people are saying it for the wrong reason. And I'm not for it. If the people were saying that for just reasons, I'd have to get behind it, but that's not what it is, and we know it. But that also does not mean that any of us now are required to support the BS, and that is exactly why you see the image that you see on this video as you're looking at your screen now, that picture in which the one upon whose intentions we agree as being sincere, with a caption underneath, "This is not what I fought for." I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to tell you that these on-crack pro-wacks of today are not even the people for whom the elders of yesteryear were fighting. If they had known how bad it would get, they would have called on us to eliminate these niggas a long time ago. And that's real. I hope that what I've said helps you. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I couldn't keep it under 20 minutes long. It took a half hour. Sorry about that. But that being said, I hope that one day this is not true anymore. And I hope that it helps until that day. And in the meantime, keep in mind that what you're looking at now is not at all what it used to be. You're looking at you're pretty much looking at an empty lot overgrown with weeds. At one point, I'm not saying it was the best garden. I'm not saying it was a paradise, but it was a garden. There was some order to it. And it degenerated because when it got started, the weeds were there, but we couldn't easily look and tell them apart from the plants that they eventually grew to choke out. And I am sorry about that. In that regard, I do feel like the elders that are now retired or expired, they really didn't mean this. They didn't see it coming. And I was too young even to have any kind of say-so to stop this sort of thing. And I didn't see it coming either. And what I'm getting at is that it's actually time for you, the one that is sick and tired of the on-crack Pro-Wacks BS, it's actually time for you to take up the torch. That's what I'm getting at. It's actually time for you to do it. And if anybody wants to take it up, I don't mind helping out as an advisor. I would love to contribute to that body of knowledge. I just don't see why anybody would trust anybody else anymore, to be honest, after what we've been through. I do lament this. But like I said, I hope that one day what I've said will no longer be true. And if any of you have some ideas for a type of psychological resurrection of our people in order to make this untrue, I'm willing to help out. Thank you for listening and for your patience. The blackest of the black, signing black out.